Good morning, afternoon, and evening to those watching this video now or in the future. I am the guy who makes random tier lists, and I'm back with another random tier list. This one is a World of Warcraft one. Now, World of Warcraft, if you don't know, or maybe you've heard of it but haven't played it, is a very popular MMO, which basically means a big video game where you play with other players around the world, and you pick a character, you pick a class. So you can be like a hunter or a mage or a warrior. There's a bunch of different things. And one of the most important decisions you make in the game is what race to play. And that's what we'll be ranking today. We'll be ranking the races as you see them here, which if you've never played this game, as you can see, there are a lot. There is also a picture here for both male and female version of the races because they have different models and stuff. Now, I know in this we can't see all of them, but I'll do my best to describe what they are. If you're at all curious, feel free to Google as we go or Google after. A lot of people have played WoW at least at some point, or maybe just have kind of an idea of what these creatures look like just by saying the names, like orc and elf. Right? A lot of these are pretty generic fantasy races. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the first of the two factions. So in World of Warcraft, there are two factions you can play as. One is the Alliance, and one is the Horde. So the Alliance are going to be the first races we do here. The Alliance starts off with the humans. I think humans are a pretty good race to play. Oh, and by the way, as I'm going through this, guys, for those of you that play World of Warcraft, you know that certain races come with certain abilities. I'm not really going to be caring about that. I'm more going to be caring about what they look like and kind of the aesthetic, kind of the fantasy that they give you when you play that race. So I'm not, if you're looking for like a tier list of like, which one is best competitively or which one gives you the most advantage, that's not really what I'm going for here. But, feel free to, let me know if it's something we would want in the future by chance. But, all right. Starting off with human here. Human, I think both human male and female as a B tier race, I think, they look fine in World of Warcraft. As far as the graphics go, nothing's amazing in World of Warcraft, but some races do definitely look better than others. I think human, male, and female are a B tier race. I used to have this thing like, why would you play a fantasy game if you're just going to play a human? I don't really think that way anymore, but that was how I thought for a little bit. And I do kind of see that mindset. So I'm going to leave these guys in B tier. I think human, both male and female, B tier. Same thing with the Tauren. So Tauren, if you are not familiar with WoW or with this universe, are basically a sub species of humans that have basically grown up and evolved in isolation from other humans. They are a seafaring people, and they tend to be more stocky, more burly than regular humans. So I have to put them also in B tier. They are different, which is cool, but I don't think they look as good as humans in some cases. But they're different, right? It's something, you're not always having the same model with humans. World of Warcraft, there's not a whole lot of customization. You can't go ahead and make somebody 16 feet tall or make them 5 feet wide like you can in some other games with sliders. So having a more burly option here for humans is good. Next here we have dwarves. So dwarves are, the stereotypical fantasy dwarf. Starting off with female dwarf, I think female dwarf does not look good. I've never really liked how this race looks. I just think they look kind of awkward. I mean, obviously dwarves tend to be short, and I just think the female models just don't look very good. Regular dwarf, male dwarf. I'll put it in C tier. Same kind of issue. They look short and stocky, and if you want to play that, that's fine. And I do have some dwarf characters, but I just don't think they look that great. They're fine. The next race we have here is another subspecies, or they call them in the game allied races. So this allied race is the Dark Iron Dwarves, basically a subspecies of dwarf that grew up and evolved underground and with a lot of blacksmithing and iron aesthetics to them. So they're the Dark Iron Dwarves. I think Dark Iron females and males both look better than the regular female dwarf, but still kind of just a C tier. I think their height does a lot against them. There is better customization for these guys, though, so they are closer to B probably than the regular dwarf, but I'd still leave them there. Gnome. Let's see here. Gnome. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of gnomes. Gnomes are exactly what they sound like. Very small race, short. Um, Not a huge fan of them. I think they look really awkward in most cases. There's very few classes that I look at that and like, yeah, you could be a rogue. Actually, let me put both male and female in D tier. I think that's probably more accurate. And then we're also going to put mechagnomes here. So mechagnomes are a subspecies of gnome that have been technologically modified with mechanical arms, mechanical legs, and mechanical other things. Yeah, not a huge fan of these, as you can tell. I love the idea, but I just think the implementation just doesn't look good. It looks very awkward, in my opinion. So yeah, they're our first F tier race in my opinion here. Next, we have Draenei, which this is one that is not really a classic fantasy race. So do a little bit of explaining. But if you have never played WoW before, basically Draenei are originally an alien race. They come from another world. As you can see from these images right here, they're blue in color, between white and blue in skin color, with hair and also some tentacles coming off the face. Their legs are kind of goat-esque with an arched hind leg, but they are bipedal. They're humanoid in shape. Different, very different. I think Draenei are a really good race. I think it's much different. So we're still on the Alliance side here. And just to give you guys an idea, all of these races that we've gone through so far have all been from the same side, right? So if you wanted to play an Alliance character, humans, dwarves, and gnomes are all different things, but they have a lot of similarities. They're all normal skin tones of humans. There's different heights, obviously. But Draenei is something totally different, and I think that lends itself to being a better pick or a more exciting pick, oftentimes, unless you've never made one of these before. The next sub-race we have is Lightforged Draenei, which are basically a subspecies of Draenei that grew up embracing the light and fighting against the evils of the void in the universe. And for these guys, I have them up in S tier. I think the addition of yellow glowing eyes, of runes and tattoos that glow all over their body, I think it's a really nice touch. I think Lightforged Draenei are one of my favorite races. I have to put them in S tier myself. The next one we have here is Worgen. Worgen are basically werewolves. They are every furry's dream. That's kind of the meme, especially they added some new eye textures that make them look more humanoid. But Worgen are a pretty cool race. Again, something different from these other ones. The cool thing about Worgen is they have both a humanoid, a human appearance, and also a werewolf appearance that they can transform into at will. Though they do have to be in the humanoid appearance they do have to be in the werewolf appearance, the Worgen appearance, they call it, to fight. So for Worgen, I'm going to go ahead and put them here in A tier. I think it's a very cool race. I think sometimes armor and stuff doesn't look as good on them, though, because they are kind of wolf-esque in appearance. They have a hunchback kind of mounted over, how you would imagine a werewolf to be. So armor does not always look the best on them. So that's what stopped them from being an S tier. All right. Next here we have the Elves. Now there are 4 different elf races in World of Warcraft. 2 of them are Alliance and 2 of them are Horde. So we'll be getting over to the Horde side here in a sec. Still on the Alliance, though, we have the Night Elf. This was the first elf class added all the way back in the launch of the game back in 2004. And Night Elves, as you can see, they have blue purple-ish skin with green, blue, or purple hair. They have a history of communing with nature and being in the forest, living with the world tree. So taking a look at the Night Elves here, I think the Night Elves are a pretty good class to play. Yeah, I think it's hard to go wrong with Night Elves. I think a lot of armor looks good on them. One thing I don't like as much about the male Night Elves is just how tall they look on the character creation screen. I think it looks quite awkward at times. But Night Elves, kind of stuck between here. There's also a class in the game called Demon Hunter where you have to be a Night Elf or a Blood Elf, which we'll get to them. And that kind of helps them. So I think A tier for Night Elf is pretty good. Next we have Void Elf. I think Void Elf, this is the first one we're going to have a big difference here. I think Void Elf female looks really good. And I think Void Elf male looks okay. With Void Elf, basically Void Elves are a subspecies of elves that, just like the Lightforged Draenei, they grew up in isolation. But instead of embracing the light like these guys did, they embraced the void. So with the Void Elves, or the Renderai, as I think they're called in lore, I really like how the female ones look. I think they look like a great fantasy race class, or elf race, elf class, all that. But the male ones, and this picture kind of shows what I'm talking about here, they gave them very high cheekbones, and they made them, at least in their appearance on the character selection screen, they're shorter than Night Elves. They just look kind of awkward, in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan on how the male Void Elves look, for just whatever reason there. Next here we have Blood Elves. Blood Elves is the first member of the Horde race that we're getting to. The Horde is supposed to be a more brutish, more warlike society. A lot of races banded together for necessity. You can see there's some more monstrous races here that we have left over. The Void Elf being probably the most humanoid looking one. Now, as we look here at, the Blood Elf being the most humanoid looking one, that's what we're looking at here, the Blood Elf. Blood Elf, I have to think, is an S tier class because they are the only kind of humanoid one in the Horde side. I think most armor looks great on them. Most of the time when you're making a Blood Elf, they're, I believe, the most popular race in the game, or at least they were at one point. So I think an S tier is great for them there. Next we have the Nightborn. This is, again, a subspecies of elves that grew up in isolation. There's a lot of lore to this, but basically they grew up in isolation from the rest of the world. They lived in basically a lockdown city ruled by demons. So they evolved to use magic in a different way. Not to get into too much of the history of it. Similar thing with Nightborn here going on to with the Void Elves. I think that the females of the race look better than the males, the female models. They look just more normal, more how you would expect. I don't think they're quite as good as the Void Elf female. Void Elf female, they have you can put tentacles in their hair and stuff. You can have some nice purple glows with the void energy. Whereas the Nightborn, you can't do as much, I think. So that's an A tier for me, but the B tier, or the male, has to be down in B tier for me. Or is it even C tier? I think it's C tier. The same problem of the Void Elf male. They just kind of look awkward. You can kind of see it in this picture here. They gave them very high cheekbones, very kind of thin facial structures. You just don't look like a playable character, in my opinion. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm not a huge fan of them. Now, next we have orcs. And then there's two varieties of orcs. There's green orcs and brown orcs. Green orcs were basically corrupted by demonic energy at one point, and brown orcs were not. This is the original color of orcs. As for their customizations and everything, they're fairly similar. Originally, you could not make an orc that was standing straight up. They had to be hunched over, but now they have changed that. I think that regular orcs are probably a B tier. I don't want to be too. Should we do that? No, it's got to be higher. Yeah, I think that's going to be my ranking for those. The green orcs, the regular orcs, they look good. They look like a berserking race. You put a big axe in their hands. You feel like it's something that would charge in, male or female. You feel like it's something that would charge in and decimate an enemy here. And then with the brown orcs, or as they're referred to in the game, Maghar orcs, same thing with the female, but I just feel like the male orcs, they gave them a lot of new tattoo customizations. I feel like a good-looking Mag'har orc just looks like they could take on an army. That's why they're up in S tier for me. All right, next we have the Tauren, which fantasy-wise are are more like minotaurs. If you a minotaur, basically a bipedal bull or a bipedal cow. Um, Now, there's two kind of variations of this. There's the regular Tauren, and then there's what's called the High Mountain Tauren. The difference basically is the High Mountain Tauren have more of a Native American influence with antlers instead of bull horns. So they're more moose-esque than bull-esque. And taking a look here at them, let's see here. I'm not a huge fan of how regular Tauren females look. I think they end up just looking awkwardly stocky, which I guess there's not much you can do with that race, but yeah, they're going to be a C tier for me. Regular Tauren, A tier. I think they're really good, but I think sometimes their size is a hindrance for them. For High Mountain Tauren, I think they fix a lot of the female model when they went to the High Mountain. I think there's a lot more customization there. And I think the antlers just fit better with the female models and stuff. And then same thing with the male Tauren. They look good, but sometimes their height is a hindrance. Next, we have trolls. Trolls are a very common and popular fantasy race. There are two types of trolls that are playable in World of Warcraft. We have the regular trolls, or the dark spear trolls, which are these blue ones. And then we have the Zandalari trolls, which are these ones. Basically, Zandalari was the ruling caste, the ruling class, the ruling tribe of trolls for thousands of years. Whereas the dark spears are more exiles. They're more on their own, and they were the playable ones for a while until the Zandalari came into the fold in the game. So taking a look at these ones, I don't think Zandalari troll females look very good at all. I'm not a big fan. Regular trolls, I also don't think look very good. In World of Warcraft, when you make a troll, they have to be like hunched over. And so they end up being very thin, hunched over, and just not looking very good. So, yeah. C tier, F tier for the females. I think again, similar case with the High Mountain Tauren. I think the Zandalari troll female looks a lot better. I'd actually put it up here. Still C tier, not my favorite. And the Zandalari troll male, I think looks better. Zandalari trolls stand upright as opposed to their Darkspear regular troll counterparts. So I think that ends up just looking a lot better. Next, we have goblins. Goblins are a very short, small race. I don't think the females look very good. I think the males look just a tad better. Yeah. Not a huge fan there. Next, we have Volparons. Taking a look at Volparons here. Volparons are kind of like a fox race, similar in stature to goblins. So the Volparons are very unique. They're rather new. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to play with them, but they do have a lot of customization. You can change the fur color on them and stuff. I think the height does hurt them, though. It's going to be hard to make certain types of armor look good on them. So for the Volparon, I'm going to go ahead and put them in B tier. We're almost done here. Next, we have Undead. So the Undead is a race you can play. Undead are exactly what they sound like. They're zombie-esque, but they are sentient. They have, the will to think and free will and all that. For this race, I think they're a C tier race. It's a really cool aesthetic, but I think sometimes armor just looks really weird on them. They're awkwardly thin. I wish what they would let you do is start with a human and then kind of degrade them and turn them into a zombie. But that's not really what they do. Most undead end up being kind of awkwardly, they have a lot of bone showing and stuff. It just doesn't look like you'd be able to actually hold a weapon. So undead are not my favorite playable race. They did add some more customization recently, which helped, but I wish they would add more for that. And then finally, we have the Pandaren, the panda people. These ones are actually a neutral race. You can, when you play through as a panda, you can pick whether or not you want to be Horde or Alliance. So they're the only race in the game that gets that choice. I think that the male Pandaren, are they both A tier? No. Probably B tier on both of these. I want to put them in different categories because I like the female Pandarens a lot better. I think they did a better job with the face. You can more tell what's going on. You can kind of see that in this picture. But I think that's also partially because I've played male Pandarens before. So the most recent time I made a Pandaren, I made a female. I think in general, both of these are probably a B tier race. Very different from anything else. Armor doesn't look always the best on them because they are pandas. They're not, as well built as some races. So similar issue there to Volparens. But I do think they belong here in the B tier. Whew. All right. So that's the ranking. That took longer than I expected. If you're still here, thank you for sticking with it. And that's it. That's our ranking of the World of Warcraft playable races. Looks like our S tier ended up being Lightforged Draenei, female Void Elf, Blood Elves, and male Mag'har Orcs, with our F tier being the Mech Gnomes, the female Trolls, and the female Goblins. Yeah. Blizzard, if you're watching, hopefully you can fix some of these models down here on the bottom, give us more options for them. I doubt that's the case, but, I can pretend to myself here. All right, guys, with that, if you appreciate this video, if you like these rankings, give me a like on the video. If you don't appreciate these rankings, if you disagree or have a comment, either dislike this video or leave a comment on it below. If you have any other ideas for tier lists that I can do, let me know in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And with that, guys, this has been the guy that makes random tier lists, signing off.